Welcome to the Be Still, Be Aware series, where nothing is off limits. I'm your host, Claire Foord. Let's talk. Hi, thanks for joining us for the Be Still, Be Aware series. We are going to delve deep with Emma Bowes. She takes us on her personal love story and to meet her daughter, Elke. Elke was stillborn at 36 weeks. What it is like to have to introduce your beautiful daughter to their siblings. How to make memories when your baby has died. What hindsight can teach us about pregnancy and the way a baby can communicate with us, and listening to our intuition. We're also going to talk about the power within and the things that we can do and the gifts that we can learn from our beautiful children, be they earthside or no longer with us. So let's talk.
Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this series is recorded and pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging.
Thanks so much for joining me, Emma. I feel really privileged to have you here. I know that we have only met by phone, so having a face-to-face chat with you is really nice, even though it is via virtual, which is, I think, more of a commonality these days. I just wondered whether you want to start and share your story. Wherever you would like to begin it is where we should start our conversation today. So
Okay.
what do you want to tell us? What is your story?
Well, thanks for having me, Claire. I just love any opportunity to talk about Elke. So I am a mother of 4 beautiful children, 3 that I have here with us, and 1 beautiful girl, Elke, who was stillborn the 7th of November 2019. And yeah, it's been quite a journey. We've just gone through her first birthday, and it's been the most brutal journey I have ever been on. Elke, is our 4th. She was my 4th pregnancy, and the first 3 pregnancies were textbook pregnancies. Not one issue the whole way through. I had beautiful natural births. I did hypnobirthing with all of my babies. And so I had this blissful, beautiful version of pregnancy and birth. And I was really looking forward to giving birth again to Elke. My pregnancy with Elke, again, was completely textbook all the way through. She was born at 36 weeks. And looking back now, about a week before she was born, I had the first inklings that something was not right. I noticed that the baby, we didn't know she was a girl, but I noticed that the baby had moved less that day. And it was actually the day of my blessing way here in Byron. And I commented during the blessing way, oh, the baby's really quiet. But I just thought that maybe she was listening to everybody's stories and their sharing. And then that night I went away for 2 nights on my own and was in bed that night, and again thought, I haven't felt the baby move much. And I had the thought that I should go to the hospital, but I didn't act on it. And that's something that has played over in my mind over and over again ever since. But I didn't truly understand the importance of going in the minute that you get that intuitive feeling that something is wrong. So I didn't, and I went to bed, and I thought, I told myself, I was a busy mum of 3, about to be 4 children, and I had this time to myself. So I just overrode that feeling and said to myself, don't be silly, everything's fine, just enjoy a good night's sleep. So this morning I woke up, still had that feeling and didn't do anything. But around lunchtime, I felt a lot of movement again. And so I thought, okay, everything's fine, and pushed that out of my head. That was a Saturday. So then we fast forward to Wednesday. I can't really remember what happened in between then, even when I went to the hospital on the Thursday and they asked me when I last felt my baby moving. I could remember feeling her on the Sunday, but I don't remember what happened Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We'd moved house. There was lots going on. I couldn't remember whether I had or I hadn't. So Thursday morning came around and I just knew then that something was wrong. Actually, the night before, I was in bed and I was on Instagram And I was scrolling through, and I don't know whose account it was on, what it was, but there was a picture of a pregnant woman taking a selfie in the mirror crying, and the caption said, "This photo was taken minutes after I was told my baby had no heart." And in that moment, I just had this feeling of dread come over me, and I knew that that was my story, but I don't think I was still at the point of being willing to accept that. So again, I told myself, everything's okay, just go to sleep, go to the hospital in the morning. And I've reflected a lot about this, and I really feel that I didn't go in until I was ready to accept what was happening. Hang on, I get my tissue. Yeah. Yeah. Because I knew deep down inside what was happening, but my conscious mind just did not want to accept what was happening. So I dropped my kids off to a friend and went to the hospital. My midwife was away, so I had another midwife. I was under midwifery care at the Byron Bay Hospital, and the care was amazing. I've got absolutely no complaints with the care that I was given. My first 3 children were born under a private obstetrician in Brisbane, and I feel I got the exact same care with all of my children. So I went to the hospital. They tried to find a heartbeat, couldn't find anything. I was still telling myself it's okay, because there had been a couple of checkups earlier on in the pregnancy where where the midwife had trouble finding the heartbeat when the baby's smaller and don't quite know the exact position. So it had taken longer on some appointments, and I was just telling myself it's happened, that's the same thing happening again. She left to get another midwife. The other midwife couldn't find anything. They just said to me, look, can tell you're really anxious. I think it's best you go up to the Tweed Heads Hospital to have an ultrasound. Oh, hang on, is that connection
you're
coming
fine.
out?
You just keep talking. So you went in, the other wife couldn't find a heartbeat.
Yeah, she couldn't find a heartbeat, and she said, I can tell that you're feeling really anxious. So it's best if you go to Tweed Heads Hospital, which was a 45-minute drive away, and get a ultrasound just to find out what's happening. So Leon, my husband, he works in Brisbane, so I had to call him. He drove to Tweed Heads to meet me, and a friend took me up there. And Leon was about 15 minutes behind me, and I went into the maternity ward and was taken into a room where there was an obstetrician and a midwife waiting for me. Hopped up on the bed. There was the ultrasound machine next to the bed. And I said, can I wait for my husband? He's about 15 or 20 minutes away. And the obstetrician said, we can use the Doppler. That's what they did in Byron. But we really need to understand what's going on, because if your baby is in distress, we will need to get you to surgery straight away. So I said, okay. So I was there on my own, and we had the bedside ultrasound monitor with the screen facing me, and she popped the thing on my tummy, and I could see the heart chamber straight away. And I knew before she had to say anything to me. And it felt like an eternity, but there was, a number of seconds while she just moved the thing around on my tummy for a bit just to make sure. And then she said, there is no heartbeat, your baby has died. And I just went into shock. That I didn't cry. I just was staring at her, staring at the screen, just almost put my hands behind my head, just like, oh my God. And then, she was telling, I can't even remember what she said to me, but at that point I saw the midwife's hand on my leg, And I remember just looking down and placing my hand on top of her hand, and just the intimacy of this stranger who I had just met with her hand on my leg. That's just when I broke down. And that was I guess, the next phase, really. And Leon turned up. He arrived probably about 10 minutes later. And then he'd actually been fortunate enough on the drive down to ring a friend who was a doctor. And he'd talked Leon through with basically the three options that we might be faced with. The baby's okay, the baby's very unwell and will need, some assistance, or the baby hasn't made it. So that was a bit of a blessing, because he came in prepared with what might be happening. And then from there, we were given the option to go home. But I decided that we were in the hospital, we may as well stay. I had a friend who 17 years before me, her first baby boy, Charlie, was stillborn. So I had a sense of what was ahead of me, and I knew the path that was waiting for me. And so I just felt like we may as well get it all moving. And so we called our families, and then we were taken for a formal ultrasound with a sonographer just to confirm everything. And it was in that ultrasound that we found out that we were having a little girl. And it was we still hadn't, her name was always going to be Elke if she was a girl. We still hadn't decided on the middle name. I liked Pixie because that's my mum's grandma name. And it was in that moment when the sonographer said, "It's a girl," Leon just looked at me and said, "It's Elke Pixie." And I said, "Yeah, that's her." And all my other 3 births, I wanted to wait to find out the sex until that moment when they come out, because it's the most incredible moment. But I needed to know who was in there so that I had the most amount of time to bond. And then we were taken back up to the ward, and the whole process of induction was started at about 3:00 that afternoon. And Elke was born just before midnight. So it was about an 8-hour labour, but really probably only about 3 hours of intense labour. I was really scared about being induced because I'd never been induced before. I was really scared about how my body would handle it. But the birth was beautiful. I used all my hypnobirthing techniques. I had morphine at one point for the last 3 hours, just because I'd never used pain relief before, and I tried to do it without it, but the emotional pain just became too much for me. I can remember thinking at the beginning and just saying over and over and over to myself, "I'm so grateful I get to give birth again. I'm so grateful I get to do this again." And I was really trying to hold on to that. And then at one point, my mind just started going, "This is completely fucked. This is completely fucked." And at that point, I just lost the ability to embrace the contractions. And that's when I asked for some pain relief, and they gave me morphine, which was amazing. It just allowed me, that just cut out again.
It's fine. Like you said, I could hear you. You just said it, this is completely fucked.
Yeah.
And you're totally right, that you were embracing this birth in the same way. But I think, was that, what were you thinking at that moment when you said this is completely fucked? Like what was that you were suddenly overwhelmed by?
Just the fact that I was giving birth to a baby who had died, and that I didn't get to keep her. Yeah. It was this real juggle because, as I said, birth for me has always been this incredibly empowering experience. So I was grateful I got to do it again with her, but at the same time, just the agony of what was actually happening, the physical and the emotional agony of what was actually happening was just too much to bear. So they gave me some morphine, and that just helped. I was actually able to just lie on the bed for 3 hours and kind of doze. And then I could feel it wearing off, and I buzzed the buzzer and asked for more. And the midwife went off to get some more. And then 2 minutes later, I said to Leon, press that buzzer, she's coming. And she came really quickly and silently into the world. But it was a beautiful, I can remember the midwives handing her to me, and I just kept saying, she's just perfect. She's so perfect. Yeah.
So what was it like meeting your daughter for the first time? I mean, there's so much anguish and pain there, but it sounds like you also felt an enormous amount of love,
Yeah,
and adoration for your beautiful girl.
Yeah, just complete love and beauty, and just holding her in our arms. It was just this really bittersweet moment where you could just see, finally get to meet your baby, and she was perfect in every way, but just also this overwhelming sadness that we knew that we had such little time with her, and that it wasn't going to be long until we had to say goodbye. So that was really, really difficult. But because of my friend Anita and her baby Charlie, I knew how important it was to make memories, to take photos, to spend as much time as we could. And we were fortunate that the hospital has Heartfelt to come and take some photos today. Leon drove home early the next morning to collect our children. Did that just cut out again?
That's okay. You just keep talking. So you had Heartfelt come and take photos, and that's incredibly meaningful because you obviously have no opportunity to keep and continue to hold Elke in the flesh again. But in these moments, you were able to capture those memories through pictures. And Leon went home and collected your children.
Yeah, he went home early the next morning. He wanted to be there when they woke up, because they didn't know anything that was going on at this stage. They just knew that Mummy had gone to hospital, and that was all they knew. So he he woke them up, and he had to tell them that that the baby had died inside Mummy, and she'd given birth to a little girl called Elke, and she was up at the hospital, and they were going up to meet her and to see her. And our kids are so energetic and so crazy. And he said they were so good. They just got dressed. They got in the car. They were just quiet for the whole drive, just playing songs in the car. And then when they came up to the hospital, probably at about 7 by the time they got there. And their little faces when they walked in, they were just so concerned for me. But it was beautiful. They got to meet her and hold her. And our middle son, Ollie, he was the first one to say, "Can I hold her?" And so they all had a little cuddle, and we had photos, we took them on our iPhone. But that was a really important part for us as a family, that they got to meet her, and that they could see that she was real and that she was their baby sister. That was Mia. We've got Jack, Oliver, and Mia. Mia was 3 at the time. And her biggest concern was she wasn't going to be a big sister anymore. And it was just really important for her to realise that she still is a big sister, and Elke made her a big sister. So I think meeting her for the kids was, a really important part of it. And then they all left and went home, and I think they went to school. And then we had the rest of the day, just our parents came and met Elke, and We had Heartfelt come. One of my friends who lived on the Gold Coast came to meet her too, which was incredibly special for one of my friends to see her. And we knew that we didn't have much time with Elke. We held her the whole time. They did bring in a cuddle cot at some point, and I did put her down in it. But when I picked her up again, I could feel that the warmth had gone out of her. So I chose not to put her down again. And at about 7 o'clock that next night, we knew that it was probably time to say goodbye. You could just see that her little body was starting to not be the same as it was when she came out. And so that was probably one of the hardest moments. I just looked at Leon and I said, what do we do? How do I leave her here? How do I walk away? And the midwife, she came in and she said, would you like to leave her in the room and walk away, or would you like us to take her out of the room? And we asked her to stay in the room with Elke, and we put her down in the little basket, and we said our last goodbyes and we walked out of there, which was the most surreal feeling. We'd walked out of hospital 3 times before carrying our baby, and we were walking out with empty arms, and yeah, it was just horrendous. Yeah.
That is the most unnatural thing to be asked. I mean, what a choice to have to make.
Yeah.
You've got a choice of 2 choices, neither which you want.
Yeah.
But do you want us to take her away from you, or do you want to walk away from her?
Yeah.
And I think that those words, yes, they're factual, but wow, how incredibly heartbreaking, because she walks with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though you had to leave her behind in the flesh.
Yeah.
Her soul is clearly with your beautiful children. I mean, how incredibly heartbreaking and so special. I'm struggling to hold my composure. There's so many trigger points in your story for so many, I think, that have been through the same in their own way. And so many things that are the same conversations and the same thing that 6 other families, 6 families every day in Australia have to figure out the answer to these questions that you wish you'd never asked yourself. Or never had to have. I think I'm so thankful for Charlie.
Me too.
For Charlie to being able to guide Elke in a way through her journey, as cruel and unjust as it is, that you were able to make those really beautiful, heartfelt moments. And I can't imagine how heartbreaking, but also how heartwarming. It's a real collision of so many emotions. What was it like seeing your other babies hold their sister?
It was actually a beautiful moment, a really beautiful moment, that they got to meet her and see her face, and they wanted to see her fingers and they wanted to see her toes. And yeah, it was really, really beautiful. My only regret is that we didn't get better photos at that point, because it was all so crazy with 3 of them there all wanting to hold her. But we do have some photos, and that was amazing. And your point about you being grateful for Charlie, I'm so grateful for Charlie. And I said to my friend Anita afterwards, I feel like every woman that goes through this needs an Anita to walk them through the journey, because she came, actually Anita and her brother came to meet Elke as well, which was incredibly special. They drove down from Brisbane, And she said to me, just take lots of photos, take lots of videos, because 17 years ago, there was no heartfelt. She has one photo of Charlie. And just having that guidance and that person that could, you know, when we're in such a fog and we're not thinking, that could give us some advice and some guidance. I wish every woman had that. The minute that they got that news in that hospital, they were connected to another woman who had walked the journey before them. I think it would be so valuable to have that support. And I do think SANS was going to trial a from hospital to home support program, which will be incredible.
And I think that there are so many things that each person's journey will bring for so many others. And I think, you know, you are being that person, Emma, you know, for other women and other families right now. You sharing Elke and your story and the story of your family will actually help guide so many other families through this. And the hurt and the pain and the heartbreak that is so unjust and so unfair and should never ever be for anyone, hopefully, you know, we'll be able to aid somebody in making those choices. I think it is beautiful and wonderful that you had the foresight to be able to say, I'm going to get the kids. Please, Leon, go get the kids. Bring them. I want them to meet their sister. So important. Because, you know, we do get asked that question, well, and there is this protective, you know, mentality. And I think that it's a reverse mentality. Our fear of death becomes our fear of wanting to allow the truth and the love to shine through our children or young people. And I think your ability to see through that and understand that, you know, giving them not just the choice, but the ability, there was nothing weird about it. No. There needs not to be anything weird about them meeting their sister or their sibling. And you made that so natural in the way you spoke about that. I think it is and the reason I focus on that for a moment is because that is one of the questions we get asked a lot. You know, it's a bit, we don't, you know, it's too much for them. They're too young. Well, actually, we're a bit too old. You know, we've got too much outside influence, but they're so innocent and so pure that there is nothing strange about that for them to meet their loved one. No. And how cruel it would be to take that opportunity away from them. So I think it's beautiful for you to be able to pass that gift on to another, to say, you know what, it's actually that beautiful moment that you have and those photos that you have, albeit not perfect, but you have those memories of there. And I believe that your children and their you know, and Elke's siblings will be able to look back on that with love and thanks, because it was real, and the dream is broken, but they are still, like you just said, still big brothers and still a big sister. And that doesn't change, you know, just because she's not here earthside doesn't change that. No. Have they spoken much, you know, in having her birthday, you know, when you celebrated her first birthday? And I say celebrated because, you know, we should. These are our beautiful children. So you had a celebration. How were your kids involved in that?
And I wanted to make it a celebration for them. So I organised balloons, a big garland of balloons and a cake. And we talked about it for weeks and weeks, and they knew that it was coming up, and they shared at school. Well, the younger two shared at school that Elke's birthday was on the weekend. And I think that's one thing that I'm so grateful for, that our kids have felt like they can talk about her without any shame or without needing to feel strange about it. And they talk about her often as if she is here, because she is part of our family and she is here. We believe that she is all around us, and that her soul is still here. But they truly, truly embody that. And there's not a day that goes by where she's not mentioned by one of them. And so the birthday was just a chance to celebrate her. And we all had tears throughout the day. All the kids cried at different times, wishing that she was here. But we had a really beautiful day. We got up I had a little present there for her. We got a plaque made to hang in a tree at a little spot that's special to us. So we opened the plaque and the kids hadn't seen it. So that was a nice surprise for them. And then we went and hung the plaque in the tree and watched the sun come up, and then spent the day at the beach. And it was just a really beautiful day. It was an enormous build up for me. I only now that the days passed do I realize how big the build up was for me. And I don't think just it was the weeks before. I think it was from day one of her birth, this milestone of how on earth am I going to celebrate her first birthday when she's supposed to be here. But we were able to celebrate it with love and with joy and with sadness all wrapped in one. And I do feel this almost this sense of relief and this lightness for having made it through that huge, huge milestone. It was almost like the last of the firsts, and we made it. We got there. And I know we've still got the rest of our lives to hold this and to carry her. But yeah, this sense of achievement that we made it through that first year is huge.
And I think it is an achievement. I think there is so many, there is the before and the after. You know, you just defined this pivotal moment in your life of bringing your beautiful daughter into this world and having to swiftly say goodbye to her, you know, whilst you only had really moments of her lifetime with you. And it's this unfair, this colossal, you know, cloud of fog that you talked about. And there's the before Emma and the potential after Emma, you know, and I suppose for all of your family. And I suppose, what is that? How do you feel? Do you feel that that is a pivotal moment in your life that has changed you dramatically, and how so?
Yeah, absolutely. Part of my journey for this year has been, I feel like I was shattered into a million pieces, and this year has been learning how to put myself back together and trying to recognize who this new version of me is, because who I was before, she has gone. That version of Emma has completely gone, and I've fought against this new version. I've screamed and I've raged and I've wished for the old version to come back, but I've come to this point of understanding that she's gone, and this new version will eventually be a stronger version. And there is so much love and beauty that Elke has brought into our lives. People talk about silver lining. I don't think there is a silver lining to loss, but there are gifts that Elke has given us, and we've chosen to see those gifts and to embrace those gifts. And I do believe that in the long run, the new me will be a better version, because I will have more empathy and I have more compassion, and I have a greater understanding about what life is really about. And I do see the beauty in that, even though it's a really hard way to learn it. There is a lot of beauty in understanding the fragility of life. And I think it definitely brings a greater awareness and gratitude for what we have, and also brings a simplicity to life. I think, you know, you can, for Leon and I, caught up in things that weren't important. We could start things that weren't really important. Even with COVID happening this year, and, you know, the potential for Leon's business to be severely affected, we kind of have this new outlook on life that none of that matters. None of it matters. We have our 3 beautiful children here with us. We have Elke in our heart, and we have each other. And that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And I think that is an incredible gift that we've been given.
I think that's a beautiful analogy that, she has gifted you so much, and she still can. Like, I think, like you said, there is no silver lining in this, in loss in this way. Absolutely not. I think that, but there are gifts and life lessons that you have so adequately shaped. If it's all right with you, I'd like to just go back through your story a little bit, because there's some moments in there that I would like to be able to use as potential gifts or life lessons for others who might be listening or watching this. You talk about, having to drive to what you had literally found out something that you potentially might have disbelieved, but you actually so knew that something wasn't right, that this was not going to be the silver lining, the good news that you had so wanted and hoped for. But you drove to Tweed Heads with a friend. What was that like?
My beautiful friend Suzanne talked the whole way. She was telling me all these stories about her life to try and just, keep my mind off going where it could potentially go. And I'm so grateful for her for doing that. I still think, I mentioned earlier, I did not let myself believe what was happening. When I say there was that knowing, there was that deep, deep knowing, but I was not allowing myself to go there. So there was this, I'm a eternal optimist. So I was still telling myself, what was that?
Understandably, I think being an internal optimist is a great gift, but also makes it hard to say, actually, no, don't go there. Don't let your mind go to that negative space, that deep, deep space of knowing, which I think in hindsight you went, hang on, okay, yeah, my deep intuition was telling me something. But you said you were this eternal optimist, and you're in the car and you're on your way there and your friend's distracting you.
Yeah. And so I didn't let myself go there. And even walking in, I don't know what I thought I was walking into, but I was just not letting my there. And one thing I have reflected on, I wonder if me being an eternal optimist affected in the 5 days earlier when I felt less movement, whether that affected my decision to not go to hospital. Because I read a great quote, I think it was from Dr. Daniel Amen or somebody, that said, too much anxiety is a problem and too little anxiety is a problem. You need just the right amount. And I wonder if before I had too little anxiety and too little worry. And so when I felt that less movement, I thought, oh no, everything will be fine. Whereas now I understand it's okay to have that little bit of worry. It's okay to let that little bit of anxiety to come up, because I think it's important to trust that inner knowing and that mother's intuition.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head big time. Is it anxiety or is it that inner knowing? And I absolutely 100% totally tick, 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 feel all those things that you talk about in those 5 days in that lead up. I did exactly the same thing in my pregnancy. My head was telling me that something wasn't right, or my gut, but I trusted the process, my body, and said, no, the universe, this is our way, this is our calmness, it'll be fine. And I really think that that's a really important lesson, that we actually do need to really listen and to tune in. I really do hope, though, that you understand and feel a sense of peace with yourself because you didn't actually do anything wrong. I really hope that that's not something that you look back on with any sense of grief or pain of that love and of optimism. I hope you don't lose that. I do think it's an important lesson, that we need to listen. And I love that, like what you just described as that, that inner knowing, that gut feeling, those little things that our little voice inside us tells us. But it's so hard to listen to it. I think it's actually, It's not necessarily about being overly optimistic sometimes. I just think also we don't actually teach ourselves to really tune into that. It's not something that comes naturally, and it is something that we have to practice. Just like making different habits, making different choices is part of our choice in life. We don't learn things without practicing it. And I think that sometimes it's really hard to listen to our inner voice. And I too wish that it was very, very different.
Yeah.
And that we could actually have heard it,
Yeah.
and shouted to ourselves rather than
yes. Yeah. And I have carried that guilt, and I have felt like I did something wrong. And that has been part of my journey, because I had to feel all of that and be deep in it for months and months. The self-critic in me just wanted to blame myself. I wanted, in the days afterwards, my midwife came to see me, and I kept asking her questions, and I kept saying, what if I'd come in earlier? What if I'd done this? And she kept saying the same thing to me. It may not have made a difference. Everything may have been fine. And I just kept asking the question in different ways. And she said to me at one point, "What do you want me to say?" And I said, "I want you to tell me it was my fault. I want you to tell me I did the wrong thing." And she said, "I can't do that because you didn't." And so I resided in that space for a very long time, but I feel I have moved through that. I still have those moments where the guilt resurfaces, but I've come to a place where I know that it may not have made any difference, but it's not even helpful to play that over to wonder if it would have. Where I've got to is the moment that I held Elke in my arms in that hospital, I knew that she'd been sent to me and redefined my purpose. Yeah. And my mum was in the room, and Leon, and I said to them, I was holding her, and I said to them, "I don't know what it is, but she has come here and she has totally redefined my purpose in this lifetime." And so what I try and take away from it is my mission is to speak up so that other women do trust their intuition, so that they don't push it away, so that they do understand the importance of monitoring movement. And if they're in that position that I was in, they don't go, "Oh, everything's fine, I'll go to sleep." They ring the hospital and they go in and get checked. And that's how I've tried to reframe it for myself, that this is part of another gift of Elke's, is that she has given me the courage and the strength to talk about her journey so that other women may be spared this agony.
And I'm so sorry that you have had that inner agony as well, alongside the grief and loss of your daughter. Like that is a hard burden to carry, that self-blame. And I truly do hope that deep inside you that you have no place for blame, that you, like you said, she has redefined your purpose, and it is by no fault of your own, that she is not here in your arms to hold. So and like you said, only you can go through that, and only you can get past that and you feel like you're on the other side of it. But I truly just I felt very much like I needed to say that to you. You have not got any part to blame in this, and you sharing that is really important, because there is this grief and trauma, and losing a child to stillbirth, a baby that has died. You're absolutely right. There are so many layers to this, and sometimes we can only scratch the surface. There are things we can do to create and memorialize these moments of love, and grief and pain, agony, as well as all of this joy twisted up with it. But also there are deep layers of emotional burden, pain, and self-doubt. And I think that's also another level of understanding that society deserves to understand, because this is not just one moment. This is a forever moment. And Elke is part of that forever with you. So I hope that self-doubt and that blame, I really truly hope you have passed through that. And I can't, but only you can truly and deeply know that. I think it was really important that you talked about the moments that your midwife, I think you said, had said that your baby had died. Now, I just wanted to focus on those choice of words because I think so often we avoid the facts and the reality. Those words are big words, but they're truthful. What did that hold with it? Her, telling you in that honesty, in that moment, what was that like to hear those words?
So it was the obstetrician that, as she was doing the scan, strangely in the moment, it was almost like I was outside my body. I was grateful that she had said that because it was definitive. I knew what she was saying. Mm-hmm. It was this moment of like, I can't believe she's just told me my baby's died, but I'm grateful that she's said that as bluntly as it is. Yeah, it was this, in the moment, I acknowledged what she'd done for me. It's very strange to even put that into words, but there was no question about what I was facing. She had told me. And I think that was very helpful that she chose those exact words. She said, "There is no heartbeat, your baby has died."
And I think there's just another gift that you have offered a clinician and clinicians who are listening to this around the globe, hopefully, that we don't need to sugarcoat this. Please tell us in layman's terms what is actually going on. As cruel and heartbreaking as it is, there was no question. And I think that your analogy of that there was no doubt because she had literally told you facts.
Yeah.
Rather than using medical lingo or trying to say, even she's passed or she's going to be born sleeping, she was straight down the line with you.
Yeah.
There is no heartbeat. Your baby has died.
Yeah.
And Elke was stillborn. And
Yeah.
she birthed. You told your birth story beautifully. Like it was still this empowered, moment, but then also with these kicks in the guts that shouldn't happen when you are birthing your baby. So I just wanted to touch on that, and I hope you don't mind me going there, but I think it's an important lesson for particularly the medical world out there, to demedicalize things and sometimes to take it back to basics and to use real language, just like a child would. I think it's really important. You also talked about these moments, and you mentioned it again, that you want everybody to understand how important your baby's movements are, and the way that Elke communicated with you, and that deep knowing. There's two levels to that. Your intuitive self, your deep knowing, that intuition you felt in you, and the importance of listening to that. And then also the importance of listening to your baby. The way she communicated was through her movements. And you talked about her slowing, but you also talked about feeling more movements. And then, I don't know, I don't know what I felt after that.
Yeah.
So can you take us through what you think that is, or why those were moments that you so aptly remember? Because it's actually a commonality that we hear a lot in stories of babies who are vulnerable, and unfortunately babies who do die and who will be stillborn. But how can we use that to our advantage in hopes to be able to protect that vulnerable baby, so that babies like Charlie and Elke aren't having to be left behind in the hospital and you walk out with empty arms? Can you talk through that?
Yeah, and it's something, again, I've reflected on a lot. I had 4 pregnancies, a private obstetrician and a midwife, and I know they spoke to me about movement, but the language that they used, I don't think I ever, even with Charlie, as knowing about Charlie, and Charlie's story was very different. His mum had been in for an appointment that day, and then a few hours, everything was fine, and a few hours later she got the inkling things were not right, went to the hospital and got the devastating news. So even I've thought about it. I even knew Charlie's story, and I still didn't pay attention. And I think that the language that clinicians use when you go in for your appointment and they say, "So have you been feeling lots of movement?" I would always just go, "Yeah, I've been feeling movement."
What
Yeah.
does that mean?
Yeah. Yes. Yep. I feel movement every day. Whereas what we need to say is, if your movement pattern changes at all, if you notice less movement or if you notice more movement, it might be a sign that your baby is in distress and you need to come in and get checked. It needs to be said in black and white like that, and not just at the 20-week appointment. It needs to be reiterated at every appointment, from when you feel movement until when the baby's born, because when you're pregnant and you have other children, that stuff does not stay in your head. So I think with my story, I noticed less movement. I noticed that she was quiet. So that was the first warning sign that I was not aware of, was a warning. And then the next day when I felt a lot of movement, that was another warning sign, because there was this increased activity for a short period of time. I've now learned that is another sign that the baby could be in distress. So and then on the Sunday, I felt this like really slow roll to one side, which to me was a similar, when right at the end, when the baby kind of just rolls to one side. I thought that was just the baby rolling over. But again, that could have been another warning sign. So I'm so passionate about women understanding that the movement pattern of your baby is what's important. And if that movement pattern changes either less or more, then you need to go in immediately. Don't ring up and do the cold drink and wait and all of those outdated suggestions. Just go and get checked.
Without delay. I think that, and the movements you described, that, and there's another thing there, you sure, we were asked about movements, but that doesn't mean anything. Be black and white. Tell us what it is that we need to know. So that there is no question that we are totally aware of what we need to do to communicate with our care providers to keep our babies protected. And without that tool, how are you supposed to know that? That deep knowing or that deep sensation, which we'll get to now. But sure, you might have felt she felt different, but you didn't know that different was a potential warning sign. That babies and that Elke has a pattern, that there is a standard movement pattern that she and every baby in their own right will have, that's different from every other person, just like we are all individual. I think that is a really, really important takeaway, that trust your body, trust your baby's movements, and listen and react immediately. Don't wait. And any change could be a change that's a warning sign. So why wait? Why delay? And it's really important that we know. So in the same way that we would, I suppose, respond outside, and I'd probably reiterate this multiple times throughout this podcast and different web series in different interviews as well. I just think it is a commonality. It's a common conversation that we keep having. So why can't it be a common conversation in pregnancy, so that we can hopefully avoid this worst outcome of a baby who has died? And that deep knowing sensation, Emma, you talked about that, this intuitive sense or this deep knowing, but not really understanding what that was, or not paying attention to it, not connecting to that. Can you talk us through what that, might feel like, or the things that you went on? I know, that's fine.
Well, I think it was just having the feeling that something was different. It wasn't even a feeling that something was wrong. I just noticed that something was different. So the first time was at my blessing way, and I was sitting there and I said, "Oh, the baby's really quiet at the moment." That was my first inkling. I wasn't thinking, "Oh, there's something wrong with the baby," but it was just my very first inkling of something is different. She's really quiet. She's not normally this quiet when I'm sitting still like this. And then the two other times where I had the feeling I haven't felt the baby move much. I should go. This is my mind went there. I should go and get checked. I should call the hospital. No, don't worry. So even the fact that I didn't have those thoughts in my other 3 pregnancies. I don't remember ever thinking, oh, maybe I should call the hospital, but I did in this one. So that was my knowing that something was not right. Another one that I will mention, the night before my blessing way, I had a dream that my baby didn't come out, that I didn't get to hold my baby. And in my dream, my friend got my baby, and I woke up in the morning and I said to Mum, I had the strangest dream last night. I had this dream that my baby didn't come out and my friend got my baby. And I just pushed that aside because I was like, that is weird. Looking back now, that was my first knowing, my first warning sign.
There is so much happening.
I now pay so much more attention.
I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, and I've asked. No, that's okay. I pay so much more attention to my dreams now because that was my subconscious telling me that something wasn't right. And again, another battle I've had internally is, was that dream a warning, or was it my intuition telling me what was to come? I think I have rested in that it was my intuition telling me what was to come, that I do believe, as hard as it is to believe this, I do believe that this was Elke's journey. And I don't want to accept that because I want her here. And why would this be my journey, and why would this be her journey? But I am deeply spiritual, and it's taken me 12 months to get to this point, but I don't believe I did anything wrong. And I believe that dream was preparing me for what was to come. And the reason that I can feel that so strongly is because in the dream, my friend got my baby, and my beautiful friend Liv was pregnant with her 4th child, due 2 months after Elke. And she went into premature labor and had her little boy around Elke's due date on the week that Elke was due.
Wow.
Now, she wasn't the friend in my dream because, dreams can be abstract, and it was just a friend got my baby. But like the dream told me what was happening.
I literally have goosebumps, my hair's standing on end. That's like a mind-blowing, it's just totally beyond comprehension, right?
Yeah.
There is, and what I will say is, whoever is listening or watching this, please don't take what Emma has just said as everything happens for a reason, or it's just one of those things. Please don't use Emma's words, in that way. But what you have just said is that our deep knowing, our deep understanding of our babies, our bodies, our intuition, it is mind-blowing. There are so many things we don't understand. Yeah. But my goodness, what an incredibly beautiful way and conceptual way to take those signs, or those gifts, I think you've been calling them. And look, I did exactly the same thing. Take the sign, take the gift, and accept it and embrace it, because otherwise there is too much agony, pain, heartbreak. There has to be a good. Yeah. There has to be good in this, even though there is so much hurt. And I love that. I think that there is definitely something in that for me anyway. I don't know what everyone else listening or watching, but that's a really powerful statement. I mean, how incredible that your friend birthed, around Elke's due date. Yeah. And your dream, what a surreal experience to have. And I think your choice of words when you have spoken today in talking about the battle that you are having with yourself
Mm.
is so beyond adequate in terms of describing what it is like to give birth to a baby who has died and to mother a stillborn child. It is a constant and ongoing battle, but one that is with so much love and clearly, you know, in many cases, I would believe, so much self-doubt and questioning of what if and what's that and why. But the battle, you know, it unfortunately doesn't finish. And I think it doesn't have to be a bad thing either. And I think you have so beautifully scripted that in the way that you have so honestly approached the conversation and your story today, and the way you have journeyed even this far. And the journey's not over. I mean, I can hear that, you know, in terms of your understanding and in the words you're using too. And I think for everybody who's watching and listening, your, you know, to Elke and your story today and your family story, this has been incredibly special and a true blessing to be able to have a chat with you, because through us talking and this conversation, I truly believe that you will have impacted so many people's lives, and not just from a grief and loss perspective, but for a conception, pregnancy journey, and for a clinical understanding perspective. There is so many moments of gold in the words you have used throughout your battle and throughout this journey. But those gifts that you have now imparted on others, I'm so thankful for. So Emma, I just want to say thank you today for being brave and being honest and approaching this with heart and soul and sharing that with us today. So I hope we can continue this journey with you as you journey through wherever this takes you.
Thanks, Claire. And as I said in the beginning, just any opportunity to talk about Elke just brings me so much joy, because I think people are so scared to talk about her and talk about her to me because they're worried that it will upset me. But the are all bundled in one. And so talking about her, I don't know, I don't see it as a sad story. I see it as a love story, and she's beautiful and perfect. And people, I do share a bit on Instagram, and people have reached out to me and said, you're so strong and you're so brave, but I don't see it as that. I just see it as sharing my love for her, and just, yeah, any opportunity I can to talk about her, I do love to do that. So thank you.
Well, it is a beautiful love story, and I'm glad that we could be part of what this is in terms of this very weird parenting journey that nobody ever expects. But thank you for sharing her with us, and thank you to Charlie as well, and to Elke, and to you, and today. I really honestly am so appreciative of you being so open, and for actively parenting beyond loss and pain. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Claire.
Thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to you joining us again next time. Remember, it's never too early to have a conversation, but it really can be too late. If you'd like to know more about Still Aware, the charity that's bringing you this series, head to stillaware.org.